Well, this is some of the main firearms that Lewis and Clark Expedition carried with them. The guns that the enlisted man would have been carrying is the Springfield 1795. It was a musket, 69 caliber. They all the enlisted men would have been carrying that armament. Some of the civilians would have been carrying a Kentucky style or a Pennsylvania style Lancaster rifle, similar to that. These were all flintlock guns, which was the ignition of the time for the firearms that they were carrying. Lewis, when he went to the armory, Harper's Ferry, he wanted to get guns from them, plus get a few other things made up. He had tomahawks made up, and he had knives, and he wanted 15 guns from the armory. Well, at that time, the armory had been contracting with other gun makers in the area, and they had a set of specifications that they had for these firearms. What they had was that the guns had to be a 50 caliber. They had to have a spring-loaded patch box that would open up, and they had to be sized up for what the men would have been carrying. Now, these were the rifles. The enlisted men were carrying a smoothbore gun, which has no riflings at all, and it was made for rapid firing, where the rifles were made for hunting and for more precision shooting. The ones that were in the armory at the time was a contract, the one similar to this. The contract was let in 1792 and to the gun makers, and some of these guns have been in the armory for quite a while. Some of them were kind of inferior, and so Lewis did quite a selection process to get which guns he wanted. The locks that were in the guns, the ignition system, were all of the gun maker of the time. Whatever he had produced, he put on his gun. So none of them were the same. Now, Lewis wanted all the ignition systems to be interchangeable, all the parts to be interchangeable. Now, this is the first time that had ever been done. So working for him working for Perkins at the armory there at Harper's Ferry was Eli Whitney, was one of the persons that were working there. He made these locks so that all the inner parts were changeable, so that the springs and all the other screws and things were all identical and in the same position. So on these 15 guns, he had those all changed. Some of the guns could have been rebreached. We know that they talked about short guns, knowing that they had a different caliber than what the other muskets carried. And so some of these were called short guns. Now, later on, the short gun was considered from Harper's Ferry to be this half stock that was later made at Harper's Ferry and called the 1803 Harper's Ferry military weapon. Now, we're not sure whether this Harper's Ferry half-stock gun was on the expedition or not. If it was, it would have been a prototype of what you see here, because there was some changes made by Henry Dearborn, who was Secretary of War at the time, and he had some changes made to either a gun that Lewis had or some specifications, a set of plans that were out at the time. So we're not sure about this gun, whether they could have been converted from the contract to this gun, and not sure. But anyway, the rifles that he had were all given to the 15 men that would have come on and would have shown that they were worthy of being a hunter, for one, and being able to take game easily with the rifles. And these guys were all selected at Fort Wood or before they took off in Illinois there, and that's how they ended up with their final corps of men. And so those men were selected at that time. They had lots of shooting things that they did at that time with the local people. They would come in and have different matches and stuff. So and the men were kind of inferior at the first, but then before they left to go on the expedition, they had really gotten a lot better. So the guns were mainly the staple of what they needed to procure what they needed coming across by all the game that they killed and so forth. They did carry some other guns that were kind of small, blunderbuss. This here is a very small blunderbuss. The ones they had were probably been a little bit larger than this. They were a scatter gun of sorts. They were mainly for a protection and not for hunting so much. And they were loaded with multiple shots down the barrel. You can see it's got quite a flared barrel to it. And these had more of a scattergun effect to them. And so they used those pretty much on the Perot's. They weren't so much held guns for taking game of sorts. So mostly the guns that were taken were of this style. We do know that when Lewis happened to get shot on the return trip, that he was shot with a short gun, because they knew it was because of the caliber, because when he got shot in the rear end there, that the ball was laying in his buckskin breeches on the other side, and they were able to size that to the gun that they were pretty sure it come out of. It was, they believe he was shot by Cruzat, which was one of the French boatmen, and he was nearsighted and in the one eye that was good, and he was blind in the other. So I'm not sure why they had him out hunting, but they did. And he was the one that actually provided the injury to Lewis at that time. So that was one of the incidences where we know what caliber the guns were at that time. So some of the other things that they carried with them was their shot pouches. This shot pouch is one that would have been a rifleman's pouch that was produced at Harper's Ferry. They carried certain implements. They talked about the bullet molds that they carried with them, which are poured full with the round ball and used to make their ammunition at the time. They also had wipers. They had a patch knife that they carried with them that was in there. They had their charger, for their powder measure. They carried their screwdriver, and they also carried a set of wipers that they carried in there with them. Extra flints for going with the guns. They had quite a few flints that they carried with them. Were gun flints. They most of them were English flints. They carried almost 1,000 of the best rifle flints that they could get, and I think 500 of the musket flints that they had with them. So they had quite a few pieces to keep their armament going also. So, and each man was either carried, each rifleman would have carried a pouch very similar to this, and each enlisted man that would have been in the Army at the time would have carried what they called a cartouche box. Now in the cartouche box, they have pre-made shots, which were made out of a rice paper. The round ball is in the top end, the powder is in the bottom end. The powder would be torn off. The powder would be primed in what you call the pan of the gun, which is, I'll show you on this one, is when you would prime it, you put your powder in the pan first. The frizzen would close it, then the powder would be poured down the bore, and then the paper and everything run down the bore with it. And then tamped in with the ramrod that to seat the powder on the gun, then returned, and then the gun's ready to fire. Now these cartridges were made up for actually firing in war, where they could use them a lot quicker. They had, some of the cartouches box had about as many as 20 pieces, holes in there for them. They also carried other pieces, a toe worm for cleaning, a napping hammer for sharpening the flint. The flint, when it gets dull, round, the front end of this gets round. And what you need to do is you need to strike the flint, take off little pieces of the flint, and then it makes the flint sharp again. When the flint strikes against the frizzen, it actually shaves off pieces of steel that sparks into the pan, which ignites the gun. This in here, I don't know if we can get a spark out of it. I'll try on this.
Yep.
Gives you a small spark off there. That's what ignites this powder in the pan. So that's some of the armament they carried with them. They also, this I guess, also had a screwdriver for tightening the flint in. And this one here has what they call a cleaning jag. This is when you could take one of the patches and wrap around the ball, and then it's put on the end of the ramrod and then run down the bore to where it cleans the gun, cleans the fouling out of it, which is the burnt black powder that's in there. There's also what they call a vent pick. It's a piece of wire, and in the side of the gun where the gun is fired, there's a small hole right down by the patch, the hole that has to stay clear to allow the gun to fire. So all these little pieces were all standard equipment for each man to be able to keep his gun in a functioning order and allow it to keep going at any time and be able to take game or whatever they needed to at the time. So. One of Lewis's little inventions was this lead powder canister. This canister is made of lead. It weighs 8 pounds and held 4 pounds of powder. Now, this was sized up to where the lead on the outside could be melted down into the round balls and then poured into the bullet molds. And the weight, the amount of powder versus the amount of lead on the outside of the canister was just about equal to running one of the guns that Lewis had got at Harper's Ferry. So they were equal in that manner to suffice themselves so that they evened out. He had about 55 of these canisters that he had with him. It was one of the smartest things they did. They, when they got to the Pacific Ocean, they opened them all, inspected all the powder and resealed them for the return trip. When he got back to St. Louis, they said one thing that we have is enough powder and lead to do the whole trip again. So they had plenty of that, so the trip would have been a lot easier for them to do the trip. Of course, if they'd have had enough game on the western side of the mountains to where they weren't having to purchase salmon and dogs from the Native Americans, they probably would have been just about right, even with their powder lead measurements. And all the stuff that they took with them out on their expedition was auctioned off 2 months later. When they got back, was all sold at an auction. Lewis wanted to retrieve as much of his cost as he could. He got just about $350 for all the gear that he auctioned off, up against about a $30,000 debt. So it wasn't much of a dent that he put in it. So. But as far as I know,
You give that back to the government then, or what?
yeah,
He did?
yeah, he give that back to the government. That didn't even pay for the men's wages that they incurred. They were paid about $110 a piece. Each private received $110, and I think it was a 480 acre tract of land that he also received. Most of it was in Illinois.
Next, we'll get our ramrod.
Take the ball out. Put it in there.
We have to put the ball on the pad here. Patch, we want to hold it. We're in the prison pan. Half cocked, full cock. Stand back.
How about that?
Keep your powder dry. Never know, that's good. Never know about homes.
Fire in the hole!
I'm here with Bob Schiff, and you're with?
I'm with the Travelers Rest chapter of the Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Association. The Travelers Rest chapter has been very active in promoting this site to be a state park. It's the only site in the country which has absolute proof that Lewis and Clark actually camped here. All the other sites are hearsay. And the chapter meets in Lolo at the community center every month during the school year, and everyone is invited to it. It's the first Thursday of every month. On the tour of discovery, which was Jefferson's name for the Lewis and Clark expedition, had to be fairly well armed because they had to shoot lots of large animals for food, buffalo, elk, things of that sort. A number of the soldiers who came along on the trip were armed with the ordinary musket the U.S. Army issued at the time. It's the 1795 model U.S. musket, and here is an original example of one made in 1800. It was made in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Springfield Armory. It's a 69 caliber smoothbore gun. You might think of it as a shotgun. A 16 gauge shotgun nowadays would be the same size. And it is a flintlock. A flintlock is a way of making the gun fire. This being a muzzleloader, you would load it with powder, then put the projectile down on top, and using this ramrod, you would ram it down onto the load, all the way down as far as you can get it. And then, so you never forget the ramrod, you want to put it back here. Now, when you have the powder, the main powder charge, and the projectile in the gun, you have to prime it. So this being a flintlock, I'll explain what that means. This thing here is called a hammer, and it will hold a piece of flint, which is a piece of quartz. And here you would put some priming powder, and you would close this down. And when you cock the gun and pull the trigger, that piece of flint would scrape against this piece of steel, creating sparks. This would fly forward, the sparks would go into this little pan, ignite that powder. So you would get a squirt of flame and powder out this side, but hopefully enough flame would go through this little touch hole here to ignite the main powder charge inside the gun. And then when you did that, you started all over again. This was the standard infantry weapon at that time, in the 1800s. So this gun may very well have been on the expedition. It was made in 1800, so it was only 3 years old when they took off. Guns similar to this were made all the way from the 1650s right up to the Civil War. But this was the Army issue musket of 1795, and it was used until they improved the things in the 1820s. There you go.
Wow.
It's not too heavy, is it?
Not too heavy.
It's only
no.
about 9.5 pounds.
It's heavier than it looks.
Yes. And when these things were made, a great deal of care was made. For instance, just look right here. You see that little swell? The wood isn't straight. They made it swell up a little bit. That's an added piece of identification for this rifle. A good deal of care was taken in making these things. And they're not only stamped with the name of the arsenal that made it, the Springfield Armory. There's a U.S. Eagle. And also there are several places in here where inspectors stamp their initials. So the gun was inspected 6 or 8 times before it was actually issued. And before being issued, it was also shot with a proof load. They put a good deal of powder in the barrel to make sure the thing wouldn't blow up under an ordinary load. So right in here is a proof mark, a P for proof. So when the gun was actually issued to the troops, it had been proofed and inspected a number of times.
All right, where's this gun kept?
Well, this gun is kept in a private collection. It belongs to a friend of mine who lends me these guns when I give demonstrations. He's interested in the educational aspects of military weapons. Some of these things are on exhibit in various federal museums. The Springfield Armory, the Smithsonian would have weapons of this sort. Tens of thousands of these were made, but probably only a few hundred are actually in collections. And they're quite expensive, and a couple of collectors who looked at this morning said it's in better shape than anything they have ever seen before. It's over 200 years old, so you would expect some wear and tear on this silly thing, and you don't know where it has been all those years. And it's one of the best examples of one of these weapons around.
Do you know how to
Well, the man who owns it actually purchased it. He's in the business of buying and selling military equipment. And somewhere along the way, he picked this thing up, and it's one of the special stars of his private collection. He keeps it in a vault, of course. And if you go to some of the large gun shows in California or along the East Coast, Baltimore as an example, you might find one or two of these things actually for sale. And if you've got a good enough credit card, you may be able to apply for it. Because I suspect this is worth several $1,000s.
Has it ever been used?
It was used in the Army. It's not going to be fired now because of the value to the piece. And it looks like it's been well used, not too well taken care of. It's in better shape than any of the others that we've seen, but it probably went through the War of 1812, certainly. The Mexican War, very likely. And it may have been issued early in the Civil War, before they had the actual percussion lock guns, which were used mostly in the Civil War. So it has a wonderful history. The unfortunate thing is there's no way to tell, because it's not talking.
Andy, on behalf of the Discovery Expedition, the Travelers Rest, Lewis and Clark Brigade, and our friends from the other side of the divide from Hog Heaven Muzzleloaders, we would like to thank you for your contribution to our wonderful stay here at Travelers Rest. This is our crew medal. This is our way of saying thanks that we came up with while we were, actually it was early on in what we refer to as the Eastern Legacy, when we pushed off to start our adventure on August 31st of 2003. We recognized early on that the hospitality and the friendship that was bestowed on us was overwhelming. It caught us by surprise. I don't know what we expected, but it was beyond our expectations, and it's been the case all across the country as we've followed the trail since August 31st of 2003. So early on we struggled with a way of saying thank you to people. As a volunteer, an all volunteer organization, like most volunteer organizations, we struggle. And one of our guys came up with the idea, well, why don't we have our own coin, our own crew medal that only belongs to us? And at the discretion of the crew, we can present that coin to folks who have been especially kind to us. So on behalf of the Discovery Expedition, this is our crew medal that replicates the first keelboat that our mentor Glenn Bishop built. And on the other side is the peace and friendship motif from the Jefferson Peace Medal that Lewis and Clark carried. So in appreciation, Andy, and in peace and friendship, thank you. We hear 3 cheers for Andy and the folks with the local distributorship for Coca-Cola. Hip hip hurrah! Hip hip hurrah! Hip hip hurrah! Thank you, Andy.
Makes sense you missed that buffalo.
That's pretty good. Circle up over here. And once it's stand up here.
You know why Clark chose me and my brother? Because we're better shots than you.
Take a few minutes, and we're going to push on. We're going to push on.
Imagine how this place was to them 200 years ago, where they found water to drink in scarce game, But it was a place to prepare for that journey, just as a place to prepare and rest for safety. These were people who'd been on the road and away from home for a long time. And a chance to spend a couple of days where they weren't actually hiking, tugging their boats upstream, must have seemed some sort of a blessing, even though they were looking at those mountains covered with snow to the west. They took advantage of the bridge that Lewis and the travelers rest at this place, a place of sanctuary. For 3 days they spent tied fear, preparing for that journey, peaceableness as a group.
All right, man. Look up. All in the right. All in the right. Good job. All in. Just right. All right, stand at ease.
Montana Army National Guard, please approach. Come on up, guys. Come on, team. Hold. Left. Hey. 200 years ago today, Lewis and Clark left this place of peace. 4 years ago today, our nation was attacked. For 200 years, men and women of this country have served and kept the peace of the nation and helped to protect the world through 2 world wars and many conflicts. Native Americans, European Americans, Black Americans, all Americans. Today, as the core discovery of 200 years later begins to leave, we wish to salute the veterans of our country, the Native Americans who have served, and particularly the fine men and women of the Montana Army National Guard. Captain.
On behalf of the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles, Missouri, the Travelers Rest, Lewis and Clark Brigade, and the Hog Heaven muzzle loaders of Lewiston, Idaho, we salute you. Corps, attention. Shoulder your firelock. Poise your firelock. Present your firelock. Poise your firelock. Shoulder your firelock. Order your firelock. Stand at heat.
seeing you.
Forward, attention! Shoulder your fire lock. To the left. Hey! Guide on me. To the front. March! Well, those Kentucky girls ain't got no comb. All the way, all the way. They comb their hair with a catfish comb. And down the way for Louisiana. So here. They comb their hair with a catfish comb. And down the way for Louisiana. So here up, my boys, all the way, all the way. Heave her up and don't you make a noise, 'cause we're down the way to Louisiana. And those Kentucky kids, they ain't got no sled. All the way, all the way. They slide down the hill on a catfish head, and we're bound away for Louisiana. So heave her up, my boys, all the way, all the way. Heave her up and don't you make a noise, 'cause we're bound away for Louisiana. One time, march! All the way, all the way. Heave her up and don't you make a noise, 'cause we're bound away for Louisiana. Forward! Halt! Facing to the left. Hey! Shoulder, y'all! Fire lock! Sergeant. Your formation, sir.
Place your fire lock. Present your fire lock.
Iron shake their iron love, and slavery clad her all in chain. We fear them not, we trust in God, New Columbia's God forever.
Place your fire lock. Shoulder your fire lock. Order your fire lock.
Gentlemen, this marks the last time that this boat in our nation's colors will fly on Montana soil. Montana has been a wonderful trip for us, the Montana National Guard and the people of Montana. Their hospitality, their friendship is beyond words. With a tear in our eye, we lower these colors for the last time in Montana.
Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day, that's a soldier's joy. Oh, Grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine. Grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine. Grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine. Along come a chicken and says she's mine. Dance all night, fiddle all day. Dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day. That's the soldier's joy. Peaches in the summertime, apples in the fall. If I can't have my pretty little girl, I won't have none at all. Dance all night, fiddle all day. Dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day. That's a soldier's joy. Oh, find the Northwest Passage, the quick way to the sea. Turns out that Northwest Passage nearly was the end of me. Dance all night, fiddle all day. Dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day. That's a soldier's joy. I curse that Rocky Mountain, so steep and slippery. I worry that another horse might fall on top of me. Dance all night, fiddle all day. Dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day. That's a soldier's joy. Oh, the captain's practice medicine on all our maladies. But please don't bleed me anymore or give me mercury. Dance all night, fiddle all day. Dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day. That's the soldier's joy. Yeah!